especially our academic institutions, our Ministry of Agriculture, Environment, and the various ministries that have been part of it. Not forgetting, we also have partners from the private sector. The piggery, poultry at some stage was coming. We also had our retail pharmacies, the retail pharmacy society. So we had a wide range of partners that have joined us. But not forgetting our major partner also, our consumer watchdog in Fiji, Consumer Council, who has been an active member in terms of communications for the National AMR Committee. So this is our governance structure. So somehow we're now linked to the FIJI Medicinal Products Board under that legislation. So we are a subcommittee under that board. So we have a linkage to the board, and the legislation will enable us to develop policies and legislation, which is still regulations, which is still in discussion through the technical working group. That was not part of the presentation, by the way. So as you can see, we have now transit in difference to the first plan. In the bottom part, we have developed these One Health technical working groups where we must have environment, agriculture, and health, human health in each of the EWGs. And the activities must be One Health, meaning that all three components or four components need to be equally having a role and participation and sharing of knowledge and resources to implement them. And each of these technical working groups has a chair from the different areas of expertise. So this is, I've mentioned this before, this is the members currently of the National AMR Committee, and how you have divided it into the One Health approach, where you have human health, animal health, and environmental health. So all the other stakeholders just come around there. As you can see, majority is human health. And Ministry of Health has the privilege of hosting the AMR Committee, hence we moved in this way in the One Health. And we are fortunate that Ministry has invested in one position that's the focal point for AMR. That main job is just to coordinate and ensure that the committees are meeting, the activities followed up, and that we solicit support and gain resources and ensure we feedback on reports to the various agencies and partners that are helping us. So this was the review workshop in June. Dr. Noor was here. OPS opened that review workshop. And this is where we are, where from the Global Action Plan, the 2015 National AMR Action Plan, and we are at this stage with launching our 2022 to 2025 National Action Plan on AMR. And I acknowledge our consultant from WHO, who has provided a lot of support in adding a lot of the work on One Health that we want to, which is the ethos of the National AMR Committee, wants to include into this national plan. So ingrained within this national plan, what's important is, again, the One Health approach. And for the first time, I don't know if you know any other document that has the three ministries signing off on this. So we have the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Environment. So this is a document that belongs to these three, thereby encompassing that One Health approach. So you see those signatures? So why do we need One Health approach to combat AMR? So if you know, One Health is a big consortium, but one of the priorities it has is, it has a few priorities, and one of it is AMR. And the reasons are there. I don't have to go into detail to them, but you know, we share almost the same environment with animals, and we are affected by animals. Even COVID, if you don't know, the original from bats to a secondary host in the Wuhan market, and from there on to humans. So there is some evolution from the bats. More detail from me. There's enough scientists here to explain further in this room. So that's the One Health approach, the interaction between the animal, environment, and human. And this was we had a national One Health AMR workshop in the beginning of the year, March, in the Shangri-La early this year. And these are the stakeholders. Most of them, again, are here. We also have One Health projects. I'll just quickly go through the One Health projects. We have EU SPC One Health security projects with the implementers. And from that workshop, Consumer Council, looking at awareness raising, we'll get the presentation. Animal waste, looking at risk pathways with FNU, College of Agriculture, and then we have the College of Medicine on integrated AMR surveillance. So these are some of the EU SPC projects. We have two major international partnerships, Combat AMR with DOT Institute and a group of partners. We also have AMR with ACIAR and CSIRO. So these are big research institutions in Australia that's supporting the AMR project. And this is again through the DFID funding for the Asia Pacific Health Security Program. So like today and this week, we also do a lot of work every year on public awareness on antimicrobial resistance. There's also groups formed for zoonotic diseases. And there's already a leptospirosis group that's hosted by FCDC and Fiji Center of Disease Control and BEF, Biosecurity Authority of Fiji, and Ministry of Agriculture members in this group that are looking at our problem of leptospirosis in Fiji. There's also been discussions on zoonotic TB. So there are other obvious zoonotic diseases that we have groups that are linked to not involved in these activities. So guideline development, some of us were involved in antibiotic guideline development with the Ministry of Health, but I am glad to hear that there is something through Combat AMR that's working on the one for animal use. So I hope there will be some progress report on that one. Border control, we have a proposal with SPC to try and improve the integration, the work amongst the different agencies in terms of the transit of plants, animals, products, and all those things through our borders, even medicines. So there is a proposal with SPC, they're still considering. So this is probably the last slide. We want to thank DFID and the sponsors that we had a delegation to the One Health Congress. These are the members that represented us. If you see any member that's not there, they've probably gone shopping somewhere. So this was last week. The team arrived safely back in Fiji. So I just want to lastly acknowledge our partners. I have to acknowledge WAAW, our representatives are here. And our international representatives are here, but for those in Fiji, WHO, who's always been supporting us in our activities in terms of the plan. Thank you, WHO, for that and the launch today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agrippa. Another round of applause for the lecture. So, let me just take this time to also acknowledge our supporters for this event. Thank you, World Health Organization, for this launch event. Also partnering with the World Organization for Animal Health. We have also received funding from ACIAR in the EMA project, and our calendars and our brochures are brought to us by the Diabetes Guidelines Foundation and Combat AMR. So thank you for all the support. Now I'd like to call Dr. Nuha on stage. Thank you. Dr. Nuha is from World Health Organization.
Dr. Jamesa, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Eric Tofari, and colleagues also from the member of the FIJI National Antimicrobial Resistance Committee, university staffs and colleagues, and partners and development who are being invited for this event. And thank you very much for this invitation. And I think it's and for the warm welcome. The WHO representative, Dr. Mark, who would like really to be here because he's been following up on the AMR and closely, especially the progress that has been done in Fiji. And he sent his regard. Actually, he texted me this morning because he sent some regards to the colleagues here, and also apologize for his not being here today. Let me first start with sincere appreciations and congratulations to the Minister of Health and Medical Service in Fiji for taking a leading role in this event and celebrating this year regional-wide antimicrobial awareness week, which is started from 18 to today up to 24. And secondly, also for updating the Fiji National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance. And secondly, I would like also to acknowledge the continuous support and collaboration with, from the Fiji government and other stakeholders. As Dr. Raffaele mentioned, that this effort is not being done only by the public sectors, but also we acknowledge the private sectors. And in fact, I have been last 3 weeks back, or maybe a month, was also attended a meeting with the Fiji pharmaceutical associations, where they make also the theme for this year also to talk about antimicrobial resistance and methods. And I think this is a very big achievement for all the partners and stakeholders here in Fiji. The leadership and coordination of the Fiji National Antimicrobial Resistance Committee in organizing national events are really commendable. We see that, as is mentioned also in the presentation I have been on June, starting on the updating the National Action Plan. And today also is less than few months, we are already having the National Action Plan today to launch. So I think this is really a very achievable progress. I don't want to talk a lot about the MR. I think all of us, we know how is MR caused an estimated more than 700,000 deaths globally in 2014 and more than 1.2 million deaths in 2019, which 286 of them, the thousands deaths occur in the region, which is including the Western Pacific region. In the pandemic, as is mentioned also, raising of MR threatens our future health and security and endanger overall development. Therefore, the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week campaign are an importance and an entry point for raising the agenda of MR, and also drawing everyone's attention to the global health challenges. As we know, MR is expensive, and adding strain to the health also system and economy through greater healthcare costs and the loss of productivity. As there is many studies which is being done. Just to give an example about what is in the UK study revealed that AMR may reduce the global GDP by as much as 3.5% by 2050. Adding an extra, maybe 100 trillion globally in the healthcare cost and affecting the low-income countries more severely. So, as we know, MR require coordinated, multi-sectorial mitigations actions integrated result of emergency preparedness and preventions to be instituted urgently by the countries. This is why launching your new AMR plan is very timely to guide the multi-sectorial AMR interventions in Fiji and safeguard the effectiveness of antimicrobial for all Fijians. Therefore, many parallel and interrelations between the health emergency and COVID-19 and AMR that provide opportunity for mutual learning. I just to say that I'm the team lead for the health emergency and also communicable disease, and we work as here the WHO in office in Fiji and also the DPS. We work all closely within the different units or the coordination teams. And this is why we see we are all together because this is it's affecting the health quality of care, it's affecting the emergency, and something we have to take all together. So, however, despite recent progress and challenges remain. Moreover, these challenges will become much more significant as the double burden of non-communicable disease and communicable disease and health emergency caused by a natural disaster and disease outbreak increase demand and also straining the resources. So beyond animal health, human health, animal health, and environmental will be also suffer. As we know, early this year, the Food Agriculture Organization, the FAO, and the World Health Organization of Animal Health, OIE, and the UN Environmental Program, the UNEP, and the WHO have signed a groundbreaking agreement to strengthen the coordination and cooperation to sustainably balance to optimize the health of the human, animals, and the planets, and also the environment, this is the quadripartites that we're talking about. And the quadripartites organization agreed this year, the global antimicrobial awareness themes will be preventing antimicrobial resistance together. Everyone has a role to play. Health professionals, farmers, agriculture sectors, patients, media, and the government, and of course, the public, they have also a role to play. As I look today over the rooms, I think I told when I come here in today, I remember in June when I come, because I'm almost like 6 months in Fiji, but I felt today when I entered the room, if I go to any table, I have someone, 2 or 3 people. I think most of the room, I know them. And this is show that also the engagement. So I said, and instead of 6 months, I feel like I have been 6 months in Fiji. So this is how I'm feeling. So I see all the representations, universities, different sectors who are being here. Even the education, I see the education sector is being presented here. And this is actually also showing how we work together as a partners. And this is also part, as Dr. Rafael, we have to really work together as a One Health approach. And this is also critical role how we can implement the Fiji multi-sectorial AMR plan. And I think this is the challenge ahead. Now we have our plan, but now we have how we can implement it on the ground practically. So this year, the campaign calls on national government, firstly, to strengthen infection prevention and control in the health facilities, farms and food industries and premises, Secondly, to ensure access to clean water, sanitation, hygiene, and vaccine. And thirdly, to implement best practice in food and agricultural production. And lastly, minimize pollutions and ensure proper waste and sanitation management. We owe our future, and we owe it to our future generations to stop the misuse and abuse of the antimicrobials and act against drug-resistant infection today. And I think this is really very impressive. The photo and the painting exhibitions in the back, and I can see also the primary school and the secondary school how they're thinking about antimicrobial resistant innovations. And I think this is also our role now for the future, how we can build and help the future for the generation to come. I wish everyone all the best in celebrating the National Antimicrobial and Awareness Week, and WHO will remain with you in implementing your new AMR plan, and will continue to provide technical support as needed. And I would say not technical and financial support. I urge other partners to continue supporting FIJI and addressing MR. And I think working together, we can make a change. And I see always the willingness here, and also the leadership of the Minister of Health here in FIJI, and the supported by the partner. And thank you, Agneta.
Thank you again, Dr. Noor. Now, I'd like to call Dr. Beata Leno from the Ministry of Agriculture, who is not only a veterinary officer, but the chief veterinary officer.
Thank you very much, Renaud. It's actually just a veterinarian, not a chief veterinarian. That's it by security. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I'd like to offer the sincerest apologies of the Permanent Secretary of Agriculture, Dr. Vinesh Kumar, who is unfortunately on overseas travel at the moment and is unable to attend today's event. My name is Beata Leno. As mentioned by Renaud, I'm a veterinarian with the Ministry of Agriculture, and I have the pleasure of delivering the keynote address on behalf of the Permanent Secretary. So normally, when the topic of antimicrobial resistance is brought up in FIJI, the first thing the average person will most probably think about is how it relates to the human health sector. As alluded to by Dr. Eric Rafai earlier, this has perhaps been reinforced by the fact that historically, on the national level, AMR-related activities have largely occurred in the human health sector, while trends in the animal and environment sectors have not been emphasized as much. With over 60% of microbial pathogens that are dangerous to man originating from animal sources, the One Health concept has become even more critical in harmonizing and coordinating cross-sectoral and multidisciplinary stakeholders, policies, and strategies in order to curb antimicrobial resistance. Another common example that is being used right now is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, believed to have originated from bats, which, besides its obvious human health effects, has demonstrated the critical links between the human, animal, and environment interface, as well as highlighting the necessity for ongoing surveillance of emerging potential zoonotic diseases in animals, which also includes those that may be caused by antimicrobial resistant pathogens. A coordinated multi-sectoral approach linking public health, animal health, environmental, and other relevant non-health actors will thus help provide a comprehensive, detailed picture on the onset of AMR and its diffusion. This was one of the several key messages drawn from the recent 7th World One Health Congress held in Singapore last week, and which we had the honor of attending. So in terms of animal health and AMR, veterinary practices that involve the responsible and prudent use of antimicrobials are critical in helping maintain their therapeutic efficacy. Across the world, uncontrolled and abundant use of antibiotics as part of the traditional agricultural practices, particularly in the livestock sector, has been a major contributor in antimicrobial resistance. As a result, animals can act as a reservoir pool for antimicrobial resistant pathogens and focal sources of infection, or contamination, not only to humans that routinely interact with them, such as livestock personnel, farmers, or veterinarians, but can also put larger human populations at risk by infiltrating the food chain and environment. The globalization of trade in live animals and food products adds another problematic dimension by allowing resistant pathogens to spread via trade routes to other parts of the globe. Thus, the poor AMR mitigation practices of a country or region can still put the rest of the planet at risk. Coordinating with the Fiji's National Antimicrobial Resistance Committee, or NAC, the Ministry of Agriculture is helping drive AMR mitigation and preventative measures for animal health sectors in Fiji, which includes working with two major AMR projects, enhancing the management of antivirals, or AMR, and combat AMR. The development of national therapeutic antimicrobial treatment guidelines in livestock and poultry, upgrading and strengthening laboratory capacities for AMR detection and surveillance, as well as capacity building trainings and awareness programs with AMR-specific modules for staff are just a few examples of the strategies that the ministry is undertaking. Equally important is the sustained farmer-level awareness and involvement being crucial against AMR in the animal health sector. The strengthening of current systems for the importation, distribution, and regulation of veterinary antimicrobials through adequate legislative and national policy frameworks should also underpin the current and future direction of AMR mitigation approaches. With respect to animal health services and AMR, this will be further complemented with good governance of national health systems and a robust regulated veterinary paraveterinary profession. To conclude, common and unique challenges do exist in this ongoing fight against AMR. The Ministry of Agriculture stands with NAC, fellow stakeholders, and the rest of Fiji in helping address this issue, supported by our regional and global partners. Vinaka.
Thank you, Dr. Biata. Now, I'd like to welcome and call upon the Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Jamesa Chandrabu, to give his opening address.
Good morning, everyone, and it's good to see you this Friday. You all look beautiful. I am representing the Ministry of Health, and I am standing in for PS. I understand was initially invited, but nonetheless, today is a very, very good day and a very important occasion. Dr. Mahmoud Nuha, WHO representative, Dr. Biato Lenoir, Minister of Agriculture staff, representative, Chair of the National AMR Committee, Dr. Rafai, members of NAC, our government representatives, our partners, researchers who are here and I understand will be presenting later today, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here this morning for the launch of this important week, where we start the celebration of the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, but more importantly, refocus the spotlight on antimicrobials and antimicrobial resistance and how they play an important part now in our lives. As a matter of fact, when I look through my notes, all the points that were in my notes have been shared by the three speakers. So my talk today will be very short. So it's just three things. Firstly, I understand that the celebration of Antibiotic Awareness Week started a while back, 2015 in Fiji. And so we've been doing this for a while. I wasn't aware when it started. I wasn't here when we saw the messaging. But for those of you who are here, hope you're seeing some change because it's 7 years now. So I hope we are able to convince more and more people the importance of this issue, particularly our multi-sectoral partners. I understand that this started off as the idea of Awareness Week, started off as a collaboration between the WHO and the World Organization for Animal Health, or the WAAW, Food Agriculture Organization. And this year, UNEP, as stated by Dr. Numa, has joined. So that's the clue for us. There's a very important agenda, and that is the engagement of our multi-sectoral partners. Health can't do this alone. We have to get our partners. We have to get them involved, get them engaged, so that we can lift the AMR profile in Fiji. A lot more people need to talk about AMR because this is the threat for the next decade. It is already started, it's building up, and in the next decade it will get worse. And if our other partners don't join in, then we'll be in trouble. So we need to get our partners on board. Secondly, what I wanted to share is on the stress strategy, the National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance. I understand will be launched today. It is a very important document for us and our partners in human health, animal health, and environmental health. I need to know about this document. We need to preach about this document. It has some important pillars, 5 pillars. Infection prevention and control, antimicrobial stewardship, very important, and surveillance. Those these three sectors need to be talking about these 3 ones. Those are very important. Infection prevention and control, cover the basic and fundamental practice of personal hygiene, hand hygiene, proper preparation, consumption, and vaccination against vaccine preventable disease. Antimicrobial stewardship is about wise and rational use of antimicrobials. None of us here can deny that there is a lot of abuse of antimicrobials. We all agree that it's happening. So we need to rein it down. We need to work hard to rein down, control the amount of use and abuse of antimicrobials in Fiji. And lastly, surveillance. Just talking to Mr. Asili, we need to up the surveillance in Fiji. Whatever we're doing right now, we need to increase. There might be something brewing underneath that we haven't seen it yet. Or we are seeing signs of it. We need to identify it and address it quickly. My last one is I couldn't help but notice the children's work and the package absolutely outstanding. And the future of AMR is with these people. Okay? These are the people we need to target. We need to go out, give them a rallying cry, a slogan, something to work with, something that's easier for them to remember, that resonates with the children, and then they can talk about it every day. And you are doing a booster. For vaccine, you can see the one in the TV. Taurano booster. Take your booster. What's that? Understand? Abna booster lawai or something. Just we need a rally cry for AMR. And so everyone of the experts can come up with a really nice one to capture the imagination of children. But I think that's the next step we need to do. Our children need to be fully aware of the risk that they will encounter when it's their time and they don't have antimicrobials. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best for this And I congratulate the work that's been done for the national plan as well as the work for the children.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chimesa, and for highlighting the need for multi-sectoral collaboration and the key pillars of the fight against AMR. We have a message also from sorry, show this email session. If I can load we have a message from the World Organization for Animal Health, if I can load it up. No. Some help. I have to sign in. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We just need to sign in. It does this thing. Yeah, so.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're having security issues with the particular link. So I think now we'll ask our chief guests to launch the National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance, which is sitting out here in front. I'm going to ask Dr. Chimesa and Dr. Rupa to come unveil, and okay, Dr. Rafik, to come unveil the National Action Plan.
Yes, so
this document has been a few years in the making, going through several revisions, and now it's finally ready to be unveiled to the public. So just lift the Thank you. This document will be available to everybody here and also publicly through the Ministry of Health's website, and perhaps with collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment available to the public. Thank you. And we have the cake here as well. And we also have a cake to launch the awareness week. So,
Bruno.
So the cake.
We can.
Okay. Okay, Alva? Can I have everybody on top?
That's okay.
Yes.
Take a photo.
I'd like to invite Ms. Elizabeth Semino, Chief Pharmacist, to just give a word of thanks and close.
Thank you. On behalf of the Secretariat, NAC Secretariat, as well as NAC, I would like to take this time to thank you all for coming up this morning and for availing yourselves to be here from all sectors, especially from admins and our support team, Mitchell, Earmark, Jack, and other ones to name. I would like to thank the organizing team as well. And of course, our Chief Guest, thank you for representing the Ministry of Health and presence in ceremony, and all our other participants and those who are available today. Thank you for coming. And I hope you will be here in Houston for the rest of the program, which the Secretariat has prepared.
As Dr. Chamis also mentioned, we had a poster competition running, and some of it is on the wall behind. We received over 220 something posters, mostly from the primary school students, which okay. So we had a very difficult time deciding from the hundreds of posters that we got, which to choose the top 3 from primary school and top 3 from secondary school. The winners are on the small section on my left. From primary school, the winners, the top 2 that the panel of judges from NAC chose are Samira Nisha. It's one of those posters over there. Cecilia Kamandra and Heshel Nandan. Thank you. This is the primary school. And the winners for the secondary school poster competition were Shreya Mala, Andy Eleanor, Darani Balu, and Clyde Dimao. So one of the participants actually made a small painting, which is the circular one over there. So some very, very creative entries, and we really had a difficult time up till 7:30 in the night on Wednesday, trying to decide which ones are we going to choose. So I wish we could expand and give more prizes. Maybe that's a possibility, but for now, these are our winners, and I encourage you all to go and have a look at these posters and see what the children are thinking. Some of these posters incorporated the One Health approach, which is inclusion of not only the human health sector, but also thinking about how the animal health sector and the environment plays a role in antimicrobial resistance. So I think that is a very important message that we need to spread. And thank you all the participants in this poster competition. Thank you. We also had a video competition running with the Consumer Council of Fiji. And these are the three winners that we had chosen. Syed Hassan, Sarla Devi, and Simran Kamal. So I might share the videos up during the tea breaks or something. So thank you very much to the participants of the we'll send the prizes out to these winners shortly. So now we are going to have a group photo session possibly outside, if that's okay with everyone. Right? So outside is good lighting and good weather, so maybe we should stay outside before tea and have a group photo. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for our kind supporters, World Health Organization, World Organization for Animal Health, and our partners from the Australian government. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes. Thank you.
Because it's
How are you? Margaret. Yes, love the shirt.
Oh, thank you. It's Friday.
You have none for me. The engine room for the plan is the implement. Hello. My dear.
Kasi may kumain na tayo, sabi pa. Gawin ka tanong phone number.
Sebenarnya.
Don't be right.
Hello. Yes. Can you do the again? Research some of the different sectors. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So.
Okay, because we're supposed to start at 11 again. We start, huh? Yeah. Okay. But no, before we hear that, we started but but now, ayun, yeah. It's on the all of that. Send me the email, whatever you want to ask. You got the email? Yes. I'll send it to the head. Oh, We talk about the technical parts. How are Just start the email communication, then yeah. Set no one.
The FPS, I'll just do the same percentage because it's not open.
Okay, okay. I will.
Please, yeah. Because I'm trying to, but if I pull it up, then I'll let you.
Okay. Tissues are Ashatra. Tissues. Box. Look at this one. Ready?
You're popping out of. You have my presentation, right? You know. Okay.
Hello. All right, I think we should get started on the second half of this program. Up next, we have about 4 research presentations. The first up being Dr. Radford McLean from the FIJI National University. Dr. Radford.
Yeah, you send that thing. You can put it in the link or what? Yes.
Okay.
Attention.
Sorry. Thank you for the invitation today to speak in the forum. My name is Radford McLean. I'm a veterinarian and an assistant professor of veterinary biology at FIJI National University, College of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. We're gonna be able to I will talk about 2 things. First, the antimicrobial consumption on the veterinary side, and I would also be able to talk about the knowledge and practices of the farmers. To begin with, I avoided to talk about antimicrobial resistance, what it is, and the AMR is an emerging group of public health threats linked to overuse and misuse of antibiotics. And when you talk about overuse and misuse, we normally talk about mostly overuse and misuse by farmers. Animal production uses antimicrobials for prophylactics or growth promoters. And needless to say, 80% of antimicrobials that are produced in the world are used by the livestock subsector. Antimicrobial use in animal is a risk factor for the emergency of AMR that can spread between animals, human, and the environment. The farmers' knowledge, attitude, and practices are among the contributing reasons for improper use of antibiotics in animals. When we talk about the resistance pattern and the cost-benefit analysis, six of the 18 most alarming antibiotic resistance threats cost the US more than 4.6 billion annually. And that is vancomycin resistance, carbapenem resistance, medicine resistance, which is across board, across the world. We are getting some of them in cattle. Carbapenem resistance, extended spectrum resistance, and multi-drug resistance. All of them combined cost US 4.6 billions annually. Why are we looking at we are looking at the animals, at the animal health sector, at the antibiotics consumption or exposure, and the consequences of the exposure. Animals are exposed to antimicrobials. When they are exposed at their own dose, we have resistance. When you have resistance, we have sending of resistance organism from animals. And of course, in the wild right now, we are talking about zoonotic. Then when those organisms crosses over to human, then we have resistance. Then we conduct, first of all, before we started doing some research, we had some baseline on AMR status in the Pacific. And what in the available literature on the AMR in the world and the Pacific region. And in Fiji, what we understood very well is that the AMR profile and patterns are poorly documented and limited data is accessible, especially so in animal health. And Fiji currently has no government veterinary antibiotic resistance surveillance network or regulation and guidelines on veterinary drug use. I understand we are now we are on the verge of completing our guideline and the regulations. However, information also from available literature indicates that although human drugs are better managed than the veterinary drugs, the knowledge is still limited and dispersed. The information is not together. When you go to the literature to look at the publication about antimicrobials in Fiji, you will probably find less than 10. That means it is still dispersed. We need to make it out there. But farmers' knowledge might be limited. The first thing first is to look at antimicrobial consumption as the pattern of it. And in this, we use the annual data from 2015 to 2021, importation data from our security authority with Dr. Shamida. And we looked at the antimicrobials that are being imported for animal use. And we are close to 13 classes of antimicrobial being imported into Fiji. Although the quantity varies, penicillin being the most important antimicrobial for animal use. I have to point out that some of this data is undergoing review at the frontiers of antibiotics for publication. When you look at these antimicrobials, what is most worrying for us is that we have, when you look at number one, the one that I read on, number one, fluoroquinolone and macrolide, they are critically important, high priority antimicrobial agents in human health, according to WHO. Penicillin is critically important, high priority antimicrobial agent in animal health. And when you have that overlap, then there must be, we have to try and do something. Because penicillin, I understand, in other surveys that we did, was the one most of the prescribed antibiotics. I will stop at that section. I will go on to this work. The work that I'm presenting was done by my postgraduate student. The thesis is under examination on the knowledge, attitude, and practices in Fiji of poultry farmers in Fiji. The start area is VT level. We could not be able to go to Vanuatu level. Questionnaire was developed and the study was conducted between November 2021 to June 2022. And questionnaires were distributed to 225 small-scale farmers. The questionnaire contains general information of the respondents, attitude towards antimicrobial use of antibiotics, engagement in poultry production activities, exposure to communication and mass media, and knowledge about antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance. The first is we show that the educational levels of our respondents involved in the survey, most of them, 59.6, were at secondary education, and 16.9 tertiary education. When you look at the graph, it shows the use of antibiotics in poultry, and 69.9% of the respondents have no knowledge on antimicrobial use or antimicrobial resistance, and only 18.22 knew what antibiotics are used for treatment of diseases. The most commonly used antibiotics by farmers is CTC, which is called tetracycline, and apparently most of the farmers thought stressor which is a multivitamin, they thought is an antibiotics. In conclusion, on the consumption, is antimicrobial consumption in food animal is relatively low in Fiji. The data shows that, possibly due to subsistence nature of our livestock production and the rural livestock population. We have reached this conclusion because the data was normalized to animal biomass, animal population in Fiji, and that's why we have a conclusion that it is relatively low. However, over-reliance on antimicrobials of last resort for livestock production, as well as importation of antimicrobials of critical importance to human health, warrant regular monitoring of antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance in Fiji for food security and protection of public health. That is the major thing. Those 4 antibiotics that are critical to human health, that have been important, need to have warrant regular monitoring. But the current Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research funded AMR project is aimed at addressing some of those gaps in managing AMR in the region. And the project is also the first to adopt One Health approach to research into AMR in animals, human animals, and the environment in the Pacific. The other one is 98.2% of the respondents were raising more than one type of livestock, including poultry, and that demonstrates the nature of our farmers and the nature of our farming and the complexity of our farming system. With poultry production, that 4.2% of the farmers raised meat bird, while that 3% raised a mixture of both layers and meat bird, which is also another complexity of our production. The most to note is the knowledge of antibiotics was low. Only that 1.1% of the respondents knew what antibiotics drugs were, and 69.9% never heard about any antibiotics. However, the source of this information was mainly from the Ministry of Agriculture for those who knew at 26.6, and that is where really Dr. Lafai and others will need to ensure we need to find a way of whether the farmers can get information from anywhere, any other sources by developing training materials and such things. Interestingly, 89% do not know the meaning of not using antibiotics correctly, and the training is needed. Disease treatment of the options was the top choice on why antibiotics are used in chicken at 15.2, and surprisingly, only 99.3% believe that the median advice should be taken into consideration on the number of days to give antibiotics to chicken, and only 0.9% respondents would seek animal health personnel to administer antibiotics. We are very interested with that. We don't know why the farmers think like that, and we need to go back. We need to go back on a focused group discussion and key informants to get the depth of why the farmers think it is not necessary. On the other hand, 69.3% totally agreed, and 14% agreed that using antibiotics in animal does not affect them or their family, which is also strange. And moreover, 98% of the participants have never received any form of training relating to antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance. That is alarming, because our farmers, and it is not unusual in Fiji, because when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, we normally talk about human, and that is where we raise awareness. We forget our farmers, and the Ministry of Agriculture is not mostly underfunded to do that. And when we ask the farmers, 48% of them say they would want to be trained through farmers training courses. I have not enumerated other mode of training, but we need to find a way of working on our farmers. I will end at that one by acknowledging our funding agency, which is SEIR funded project led by CSRO, Ministry of Agriculture, under the project enhancing management of antimicrobial resistance. I will stop at that unless there is anything to respond to.
Questions? Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Redford? Okay, hold on.
Thank you, Dr. Redford. I just have a question regarding the growth promoters being used in the country. Would you be able to tell us, does it have any antibiotics, and maybe the farmers are giving that without knowledge that it has antibiotics?
What we are saying is that most of the antibiotics are handed to animal food as the growth promoters.
So when
they are actually antibiotics, but called a different name. Initially, before the antimicrobial resistance movement, they were actually being called antibiotics antidote. They changed the name to stop the public to getting around. It's just a change of tactics to avoid alarming the people.
So you said in your research that it's low, and usage is low in Fiji. So does that mean that the farmers don't even use the growth promoters, or they don't know?
We are saying based on our data and adjusted to animal biomass, the usage is low on the Fiji setup. But the ones that are using, are they regulated? Because when you go out there with the farmers, you actually find them with antibiotics.
Sorry, I'll just add a bit further to what Dr. said. The Ministry of Agriculture issues permits for veterinary drugs and supplements that come into the country. I think as Dr. Cressy will confirm, but only in-feed antimicrobials or inward antimicrobials would come through the bulk supplies. So like FIJI or roosters, we don't get applications from individual farms. I think the only drugs that the ministry would provide to farmers would be like coccidiostats that would be given to poultry. What else would be yeah, and vitamins and stuff. But in terms of farmers importing on their own, we don't get applications for that, and we probably won't do that currently.
So the chances are, so the commercial farms might be using it, but the individual farms.
Yes, yeah. So it'd be the big commercial farmers like food rooster and raised animals or poultry farm.
Thank you.
And does that study include the commercial farms or exclude the commercial farms?
The study we did on the small scale farmers.
So it excludes the commercial.
It exclude, we expect to target the commercial separately because it's a different story.
Yeah.
The good thing with antimicrobials in Fiji is they are highly, you can get them because it is through biosecurity only. But for human, you can get through other means. So we know our data is correct. Because that is what was actual product imported. The ministry issues the permit, biosecurity check the actual product imported.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Also, your results showed that about 30% of the farmers have knowledge on antibiotics. What is FNU, and also maybe a question towards that, what is being proposed to create awareness, not only because they're farmers, they are members of the community. So what are proposing to improve their knowledge? But one of the good things is that they are also not using antibiotics in this setting because it's kind of fun. Thank you.
One of the things that I think I mentioned it when I was presenting is those that know, they only know from the Ministry of Agriculture. We need to find other way. There are consumer councils, there are pamphlets from, it is a job now, Dr. Lafay to have a team and meet and know how to handle that.
There's a question.
So, thank you. Thank you. This is the first time I've seen statistics. And I know I've heard about it, but quite alarmed looking at the statistics. So I see two areas that needs addressing. One is the farmer who doesn't know the product he's using. The other one is the big producer who's changed the name antibiotics to something else, the hope of hiding the fact that antibiotics can be used. So, as an expert in the field, how do you look at addressing these two areas or two targets?
The first thing first is for the small producers, we need to train them to know what is antibiotics, how it is used, if it is used, what are the consequences, right? The big producers, we need to train them on inappropriate use or improper use or misuse if they can, because they are the ones that have it. That's the only thing I can say.
Legislation.
Registration, I know, I hear most of the questions about registration. The major drawback with the veterinary drugs is they are lumped up with Medicinal Products Act, which is and they tend to be, when the Medicinal Product Act is being looked at, they tend to put the veterinary side aside, that it is there in the Medicinal Product Act. It's only that it is overlooked that there is no problem.
I got a question, Dr. Raipal. Thank you for the nice presentation. Bullet 6, surprisingly, the 9.3% believe that veterinary advice should be taken into consideration versus the 0.9%. So it rounded up to 1% only responded that would seek animal health personnel to administer antibiotics.
Yes.
What does it mean, the 1%?
The only 0.9 responded. I'm saying the 0.9 of the respondents, 0.9% of the interviewed people, they are the one that would seek animal health personnel. And I have said we have a challenge there. We need to go back with the focus group discussion and key informative to understand why they think like that. Because it's another follow-up research altogether, because it's also surprising to us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. My question was related to your last few statements. I think it's important to get those recommendations out. This is a basic study. And we know the sample size is quite small, but it reflects, it's given us a lot of information, but there is scope for, more work on this, like you just said, focus groups. But I think the important one that I want to say is the process of, rather than going straight, everyone has this trigger about going straight into awareness. Because when in human health, when a clinician gives an antibiotic to somebody, it is explained, supposed to be, it's explained how it's used, what are the risks, and how you take it. So that process is also needs to be quite descriptive, whether that is a policy issue for agriculture in terms of whatever, because the farmers don't just go to the shop and buy it. Somebody is giving it to them. So who's giving it to them needs to give that first line of education before you go into awareness. Yeah? Need to explain that this is an antibiotic, what is the risk factors, what is all that. Yeah? And that's where they gain the understanding. They should gain the understanding before they take it. Same thing with human health. When you give it, the person, most of the time they don't ask questions, they just take it. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of recommendations to extend on this study. And not just confine ourselves to looking at that awareness of farmers, but the whole process, the process that leads to some policy change in terms of how antibiotics are given out in animal health.
Yeah, my last thing is NAC has a lot of work on the animal health side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the questions. Good to see a lot of keen interest in this area. And I'd like to mention as part of our activities for this week, actually it's deferred to the next couple of weeks, we are doing some training for farmers up in Corombo. So we're partnering with the Ministry of Agriculture and Biosecurity and the WAAW, World Organization for Animal Health, to extend some awareness to the farmers up in Corombo. So let me just take this, because we're not able to play the video from a World Organization for Animal Health. We can try to do that now. So this is from Dr. Hirofumi Fujita from World Organization for Animal Health.
McDonald Bartlett, Chief Executive Officer, Biosecurity Authority of FIJI, Dr. Eric Rafai, Chairman of the National Antimicrobial Resistance Committee of FIJI, Permanent Secretaries, distinguished guests, representatives from Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, technical expert, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Hirofumi Kugita, Regional Representative for Asian Pacific of World Organization for Animal Health, WAAW. On behalf of the WAAW, I would like to thank Biosecurity Authority of FIJI, as well as National AMR Committee of FIJI, for kindly inviting me to provide opening remarks at the launch of World Antimicrobial Awareness Week 2022. I am particularly glad to send a greeting from Tokyo, Japan today, because this is the first time in a while for WAAW to represent animal health sector among the One Health partners in FIJI, whereas Biosecurity Authority has been a long-lasting biosecurity counterpart of WAAW regarding the AMR-related activities. As you know well, AMR has recently been recognized as one of the global health threats facing humanity. Most of the available antibiotics are losing their efficacy in treating common human and animal diseases as microorganisms increasingly develop resistance against these antibiotics. Since it is difficult, costly, and takes many years to develop new antibiotics, it is crucial that we use available antibiotics prudently and conserve effective antibiotics. Due to growing demand for animal proteins, most countries in Asia and Pacific have seen their livestock industry transform from small-scale backyard farms to large-scale intensive farms. This has resulted in increased use of antibiotics in animal production, quite often used inappropriately as substitute for poor farm hygiene, farm management, and biosecurity practices. WAAW has been advocating for raising awareness on the growing threat posed by AMR based on the scientific evidence and data collection. We have been also supporting our members to improve their capacity to implement the international standards and guidelines in order to fight against AMR together. I hope that during the coming weeks of WAAW, starting from today, you and your stakeholders will be able to discuss ways and strategies to adopt responsible use of antibiotics in animals. At the WAAW, we are at your disposal to provide our support to further strengthen your works on antimicrobial resistance and antimicrobial use. I once again thank Mr. Bartlett and his team on behalf of WAAW for playing an active role in WAAW event series. I wish you all a successful and fruitful WAAW 2022 in FIJI. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thanks once again to the World Organization for Animal Health for the support of this week. Right, so get Dr. Vincent up here for his presentation.
Introduce Dr. Vincent.
Dr. Vincent Lal is from the University of the South Pacific, and he is mostly focused on environmental studies. So he's also a member of NAC. So welcome, Dr. Vincent.
Thank you, Rima. Before I begin my talk, I'd like to ask a question. What is the environment? Can anyone please raise their hand to answer it, so I should choose? Okay, I think table 1 is a bit busy. Maybe table number 2, which is like 1. Anyone from table 2, what is the environment? Okay, anybody can answer actually. It's just a very simple question. I think I'm hearing the right answer somewhere. That's right, yeah. And maybe that leads to my second question then. Is the earth finite?
Yes.
Yeah. So if the earth is finite, then all the situations that can play out on earth is also finite, right? Okay, so let's start about the issue now, the AMR issue. So we are celebrating a very important week, which is the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week. You can all hear me? Okay. So what is AMR? I think I don't need to really talk about it too much because a lot of speakers have already sort of elaborated on the topic, right? I will these slides are borrowed also from some of my colleagues from University of South Australia, so I want to acknowledge the contribution for this topic. Not only is AMR going to be a huge issue in future, and not only does it concern human beings, with the number of people who are going to die, basically with AMR related issues, but the question then is, why do we need to really monitor AMR? Is it just a human issue? Is it only concerning human beings? Or as I mentioned before, this is the AMR issue in the environment. So where do we go if the environment is contaminated with AMR related issues? We have a finite earth, right? So the question then leads to what the role of the environment in One Health AMR. We've been talking about One Health, and I think a lot of people here know what One Health is and how AMR sort of can be addressed by this collaborative effort of One Health. This is just a diagram, a photo of how the One Health approach encapsulates the message of AMR contamination or pollution for everyone. And if you look at this photo, you can see the red dots. Just a very simple way to show what's really happening. So the dot is, in this case, pharmaceutical compounds, but there are other AMR-related pollutants, I would say, because I come from that kind of background, so I would call it pollutant. And you see the red dot everywhere. I mean, who has a red dot on them at the moment? Yeah, I think everybody in this room has a red dot. So the thing is, like, every living organism is now sort of affected in a way by such issues, AMR-related issues. And the thing is, we really have no idea because we can't see this red dot. We really can't see it. So what we need to do is to really, when I say the role of environment in One Health, we need to understand what the problem is in the environment with AMR, and then we can start. Only when we identify this problem of AMR in the environment, can we address it? What are the major sources of AMR, antimicrobial resistance in the environment? Now, these are things that you are aware about, things that you can see. For example, poor sanitation, poor sanitation, what it is. You can see waste effluents being discharged into the environment. But we didn't know that they also, they are a major source of AMR. Not many people know that. Then there is also the obvious, the affluence from the pharmaceutical manufacturing. So all the chemical drugs and all that. So they also get to be thrown somewhere. A lot of people really don't finish the course. And they just sit in their house somewhere or, in big bulk stores, and they need to be discarded eventually. Where does it all go? It doesn't get transported to Mars. It's on Earth somewhere. So it's in the environment, it goes to the environment. Waste from healthcare facilities, antimicrobials, you can sort of read about the different major sources. I think that's for homework. Now, I think for me to be here, I should talk about what we are doing about it, right? So I would bring to your attention some of the things that we have been doing for AMR-related work in the environment space. In terms of understanding the problem, we need to go out there and make sure we can identify what the problem is. And for that, you need to really know how to do proper sampling and proper analysis. These are technical things. So basically, going out and screening the environment, different parts of the environment to see where the issue is. So we have done some studies together with our collaborators to basically sample or collect soils. We collect water, marine water and fresh water, both water that is, potable water as well as effluent, biosolids, all the wastewater that goes out, sediments from rivers, manure, and you name it. We've done quite a lot of collection. And I wouldn't be sharing in my slides the results because these will come later. They are sensitive results, right? So they will be shared at the right time. But what I will share is that the issue is there. You can't see them if you go swimming in the Sugar Point or somewhere else, maybe Vyomba or somewhere. You just go around swimming, but you don't know what's out there. So this is just a question mark. Should we really know about our environment much more? It's just something to really think about. So screening is important. Lack of understanding is the issue. We really don't know what's out there in the environment for AMR. How do we really find it? How do we answer that question? What's there? There are certain ways to do it. You do microbial community screening, meaning you collect the samples and you send it to labs that are really good at analyzing these samples to give you the information you need about AMR. So we do that with our collaborators, and I've listed down some of the things we do. So second phase of work that we've been doing under the AMR projects in Fiji is to understand the pathway. So go to the screening. We just go out there, we collect a number of things, and we try and make a picture of what's happening in the environment with AMR. Second is, now that we know what's where, which AMR issue is where or maybe there, what is the pathway? Is there a pathway from humans to the environment or animals to the environment? Or is there a pathway where the environment is affecting the humans and the animals? So that kind of study is also being done with some of the things. While we do these studies, we identify what really works in our situation. Meaning, for example, in our waterways, what would be an organism that's easy to look at and that can indicate exposure to humans from our environment? What is like a bridge that connects the issue of AMR in the environment to human health or animal health or whatever? So in this case, we found the Kai, right? We all like having Kai. No, but it's a Violacea, it's a scientific name. If you make Kai really well, it's a really good stuff. But it can have, you never know. It can have AMR issues in there. So it is a bridge to see, it's like a bioindicator to indicate whether there is a problem of AMR in agriculture, whether the human activities are causing the AMR introduction, or whether the industrial pollutions are sort of related to AMR issues, and all through Kai, just one humble Kai. So it can show you so much. Apart from the AMR microbial sort of analysis and gene sequencing and all of that, the fancy labs that do it, we also sort of have done some work on antibiotics, which cause some of these issues. Now, this is a map of WAAW, and a PhD student at USP did this. So what he did was he collected some samples across the coastal regions of WAAW, from Lelubia, which is a really nice picnic spot, I think, to Laudala Bay. Don't want to swim there too much. And then Suva Harbor and Pacific Harbor and all of that, right? So you have a nice profile of beautiful beaches where you can sort of go swimming and also collect water for AMR monitoring. So we did sort of analyze this water, and in the highlights you can see, I don't know if you can read the highlights, but it says that 72 pharmaceuticals were quantified in coastal waters of southern WAAW, Fiji. Now, do you like swimming with pharmaceuticals products floating around? I wouldn't scare you. Swimming is a good activity. Look at the concentration. They are very small concentrations. So what does it mean? So the awareness is going to be quite important on what concentrations of these chemicals mean for AMR-related issues in the environment. And the paper, you can print it out, read it in detail. You'll like it, I think. Sampling and analysis. Now, this is very interesting for me because one of our master's students is working on wastewater and clinical isolates. Now, here I present two types of wastewater. One is a really well sort of, structured management of wastewater. Which wastewater treatment plant is this? Just the obvious one, I think. It is Kinoya, thank you. It looks big enough to be Kinoya. And yeah, and I think Kinoya is doing well with the wastewater treatment. Wastewater treatment. So that's Kinoya, and it is supposed to really treat the wastewater properly and then release it into the environment, right? So we are collecting samples from there. And if you look at the other picture, that doesn't really look like a well-managed wastewater management, right? So that is the reality in many developing countries. I just want you to soak that in. So that's the wastewater. That's an issue that a lot of people do face, unfortunately, and it puts them in direct sort of exposure, and the environment exposure is realistic, very realistic. That I don't want to swim in. Now, this is quite detailed to read, but when I mentioned the 72 pharmaceutical products or drugs floating around, these were some of them. So if you find this paper, you are most welcome to read which ones they are. Right, but there's quite a lot. You can see that the concentrations range from very small to quite, interesting levels. But you also probably need to ask the question, if I can get one sample with 72 different kinds of chemicals floating around, how many others are there, right? Which you have not really looked at. So basically, if one of them is a risk to your health, how much risk are you under when all 72 are present, right? I mean, just a question, but maybe there's these levels are too small for anything. Toxicologists may answer that. The list goes on, so just highlighting again, sharing that there's a lot out there that we don't know about. Only when we try and find it, we find that these things are there. So if you look for it, you will find it, you will know it better, and then you can address the issue better. Now, this is just a sort of indication of the frequency. These results have been presented before by the PhD student and other conferences, but I'm just highlighting that the frequency of occurrence of different pharmaceutical drugs can be different at different locations or different situations. So there is not a one solution for all. You need to have a proper sampling that will give you a better understanding of the situation. So what I'm trying to say is by experimenting more, by doing this more, you will have a precise sampling that will be able to give you a better understanding of the real situation. So only by doing it, you will understand how, what the situation is, the real situation. But we really don't do it. We just go once and do it, and then we don't know. Maybe next day it's not going to look like this, right? These are some results from our master's student who is doing some work on AMR, and we would like to thank CWM for their assistance there too with clinical isolates. So we are working on what is known as phage therapy in some parts of the world. I think they do all that kind of stuff, but we are trying to see whether bacteriophage or phage, which actually kills or destroys the resistant bacteria, are present in our environment, and can they be part of the solution? So both the problem and the solution can be together at the one place if you look for it. So here we find in clinical isolates resistant bacteria, MRSA, one of the nasty ones. And we were able to identify the MRSA through different test protocols. So we did a number of testing. You can read about this. I can share the slides. We really said, okay, this is MRSA. So we were able to identify the MRSA in the clinical isolate. Then we wanted to find out whether the sewer system or the wastewater that's out there, does it have the phage that can sort of address this issue of MRSA? So after a lot of work and trying to identify from the different samples, we did 8 months of sampling without finding the right connection to the MRSA isolate. But eventually, we did find a few viruses that were very close to what we were looking for. And in consultation with our expert laboratories in Australia and others, we were able to find the right phage out there. So Kinoya has the answer. So you can actually do this kind of work and identify solutions to problems too. Yeah? It is the other side of the problem. Not only look at the problem, try and also find solutions. And we still don't know whether this is a novel phage, but we are trying to do those gene sequencing, full gene sequencing, to identify whether this is a novel phage. But already this paper is being drafted for publication, and just identifying the phage itself that addresses such an issue. One of the first isolates of this virus is, like, in itself is quite an important finding. Now, just conclusions based on the limited work we have been doing in the environment sector. Not a lot of work, so the patterns are not familiar to us. meaning we are still not really able to understand pattern recognition. The more we do this kind of work, the better we will recognize the pattern. So pattern recognition in environment is very essential. It is a tool to understanding the problem. So the more work we do in this field, going out there, collecting water from different locations, collecting soil, kai, and all of that, from different land use areas to maybe different hotspot areas or remote locations, then we can tag these different patterns to these different locations and understand exposure better and scope the problem better. Some conclusions generally from the student who works is that the lytic phage was isolated using existing laboratory facilities. So our laboratories are capable of at least doing some level of work to isolate at least properly, if you do that properly. It is a challenging work. You need to have some patience because this is being done for the first time. So we encourage more young people out there and more researchers to engage in this kind of work. To the best of our knowledge, we say that this is the first lytic phage, not phage, isolated reported from FIJI. That's what we are saying. We have to verify. And one of the strong messages that we suggest that the development, meaning for environment sector to do this kind of work more. We suggest that the development and use of the methods that are standardized globally to be used for environmental sampling. You need to figure out using standardized methods how you do precision sampling to enable comparable and validated data. You can create data, but if it is not meaningful, it does not contribute to anyone's benefit. And share for the surveillance of AMR in FIJI. It has to be open access. People should have access to this data. Focal areas, I wouldn't say conclusion because it's a work in progress. Enhance environmental governance planning and regulatory frameworks, big things to say. Identify and target priority AMR relevant pollutants. Which ones are out there? Need to take inventory. Improve reporting, surveillance, and monitoring. We need to do this more often. Prioritize financing, innovation, and capacity development. I think capacity building is really a big part of all of this as we move forward. This is the most important slide. Would like to thank the collaborators. They are listed here and in person here also, some Erika Pai, thank you, sir, and NAT members. Also, very important, the communities that came forward and wanted to assist us in collecting the samples. Thank you so much. Any questions?
So I just had a session from Eric to explain what phages and terms like MRSA means. For the people, not everybody is a health professional. So phages or bacteriophages are viruses that kill bacteria, consume bacteria. Phage being the base Latin word for eating. So bacteriophages things that eat bacteria. They're basically viruses, right? And MRSA being methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus is basically a highly resistant form of Staphylococcus aureus, which is a bacteria that mostly infects surface of skin. So if you get a staph infection, it's mostly on the skin, and you get boils and pus coming out. So MRSA is a highly resistant form that does not respond to any antibiotics. So any questions from the audience?
Can you explain the lytic thing again? Like, so are those bacteriophages able to kill?
Yeah, so these lytic bacteriophages, right? They are bacteria specific. So meaning the MRSA will have a specific phage that can attack it. And for eukaryotic cells like ours, I think. Yes. Yeah. So for those, the phage is not able to infiltrate and cause the lipid breakdown. So meaning that's where the phage therapy comes in useful. So it is very bacteria specific. So you find the right virus so that they're probably the most abundant creatures around. So you find the right virus for the right bacteria. It's a very specific treatment. So it's very interesting that the solution lies in the environment too.
This is a mother's question. Tomorrow is market day. We go to the market. So which car is
That's actually a really good question. So, you probably would like to ask we know we really don't ask the vendors, where is this guy from? So you are okay, good. You are a good one. Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is to ask where this guy is from and whether they actually depurated the cat, meaning whether they put it overnight for cleansing or something like that. That removes a lot of stuff itself. But if that's not done, then just some background information on where the kite is from is very useful. Now we've been collecting kite, and I don't know if I can, say anything about it. But the thing is, if you can get the kite from as far up the river, the better. So there are the kites are actually like semi-brackish, I think. So they occur in certain parts of the river only. So as far as the salt water goes up and mixes with the fresh water, so there is a range in which they will occur. And that's the range where most of the kai have been collected in most rivers. And kai size is also an indication of the environment. Smaller kai, larger kai. So they are size does make a difference. So the big kai sometimes are actually good. Yeah, so maybe I would say ask where the kai is from and just know that some kai where there is less human intervention around is better. Maybe about level.
Hi, thanks, Dr. Lal, for that wonderful presentation. I just have a question around that. You are able to praise that you don't have this antimicrobial resistance or this antibiotics present in this are we able to go to an extent and determine the concentration or to the extent of it, and if we are able to what level is passed from the food chain at the different providers?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the reason why kai was highlighted here is because it's like a bridge from environment to humans. Now, the bridge is there because we eat them. So the thing is, if they are just there, it doesn't really matter. But the concentrations of the antibiotics that sort of they accumulate could be an issue. Also, obviously, the resistant genes for the microorganisms that they have inside. So it's interesting because we really have not a lot of information at the moment. We can sort of say that if these are kai that have been sort of exposed to such human activities where the chances of AMR being high, then you probably should avoid eating those kai as much as possible. And there's so many other things with kai that are not so good. But I would not say they're bad, they're really good stuff. Okay, thank you.
I think we learned about bacteriophages back in high school. But at the time, it's a very interesting concept. And currently, bacteriophages are being looked at as one of the potential solutions to AMR. It's interesting that they're present all over in the environment. Like goes to show that if nature presents the problem, it can present the solution as well. So environmental surveillance is very important. Up next, is Ms. Ashifa Ayub from the Consumer Council of Fiji. Great, tall ladies.
Don't think, Rina. Okay. Good morning. So good morning, everyone. Bola Binaka from the Consumer Council of Fiji. Just a disclaimer, though we are both green, that's not me. So my name is Ashifa Ayub, and I'm the Manager Research and Policy Analyst with the Consumer Council of Fiji. And I'm honored today to be presenting on behalf of Consumer Council of Fiji on World Antimicrobial Awareness Week 2022 launch awareness on the regional theme, Stewards for the Future, one movement to fight antimicrobial resistance. This is my presentation layout today. So before I start, why is antimicrobial resistance a consumer issue? Because with all the experts here, you might be thinking, why is Consumer Council here, right? So why is antimicrobial resistance a consumer issue? Anyone for that matter?
Because they consume.
Exactly.
Because
Short and simple. Because at the end of the day, you and I are consumers. Antimicrobial resistance occurs when bacteria change in some way that reduces or eliminates the effectiveness of drugs designed to cure or prevent infections. Yet, a thought-provoking question lingers. Why should we be concerned about antimicrobial resistance? Antimicrobial resistance has been called out to be one of the most world's pressing issues of public health problems. Almost every type of bacteria has become stronger and less responsive to antimicrobial treatment for a post-antibiotic era in which crucial medicines stop working and common infections can kill again. This exposure can arise from oral consumption of antimicrobial or antibiotics and from the spread in farms to people through air, water, soil, manure, and consumption of contaminated meat and animal products. Whilst this may linger and trigger for the enforcement and the action at the top levels, it is crucial to note that the impact is mostly borne by the consumers. Consumers are people who purchase goods and services for their usage. The World Health Organization underlines the important role that consumers can play. Through their actions and choices, consumers can act as a driving force in the market and have a strong influence of how goods and services can be produced. Generally, consumers' understanding of antimicrobial resistance is characterized by misconceptions and low levels of awareness and knowledge. Public knowledge regarding the harms of AMR and its implication is commonly limited. For instance, there was a very interesting survey that I encountered. This survey conducted by the Wellcome Trust in UK in 2015 demonstrated that there was a limited knowledge in such contexts. Many of these surveyed consumers believed in self-diagnosis, whereby statements such as, I know my body, I know what has worked before, were recorded. Analogously, when asked what resistance meant, responses such as, no idea, I might need a dictionary, or it sounds like a made-up term, were illustrated. As for our Fijian jurisdiction, Fijian consumers can easily access their favorite over-the-counter medication, including antimicrobial or antibiotics, at any pharmacy in their town and cities at an affordable rate. Habitually, a bad habit persists, whereby some of these consumers share their antibiotic course with their families in an attempt to self-diagnose and reduce cost. However, these consumers are not medically trained or to be in a position to even diagnose or let alone prescribe. In a nutshell, the more antibiotics we consumers use, the more bacteria become resistant to it. Many consumers are overusing and abusing antibiotics without realizing its side effects. Henceforth, this is where our council actively shines in. We are the statutory representative of consumers in Fiji, whereby we do all such acts and things that it may consider necessary or expedient to ensure that the rights of the interest of the consumers of the goods and services are promoted and protected. We are the leading recipient of consumer complaints, undertaking consumer research and endowing advocacy. While there may be technical terms involved, our team effectively explicates in layman's terms to enable easier public absorption and understanding. At the outset, our initial proposal had stipulated its core objective to coin around employing social media, mainstream media, printed materials, and community and school engagement to educate consumers or the students or the individuals on One Health. It can be projected that adequate awareness and advocacy in this context can foresee benefits in our Fijian as well as the global market. For instance, it can assist in policy formulation, that is creating a leeway for policymakers to implement regulations pertaining to over-the-counter drugs, prescribed drugs, chemicals used in feeds, and so forth. Secondly, the community can witness a safer environment as consumers would have better and healthier options, causing the manufacturers to augment their processes. The third point is our awareness and campaigning methods can set precedents for the other nations who share similar characteristics as Fiji. The coordinated task that will be undertaken by our council is the council will be conducting an edifying three-tier multi-sectoral panel discussion on the role of policy, practitioners, academia, and the consumers in addressing public health threat due to antimicrobial resistance per se at the end of this month. In order to address these growing problems, the council is taking a holistic approach in getting all relevant stakeholders on board so that there is a collective effort and that we are not working in silos. Interestingly, the World Health Organization has articulated that AMR is a complex problem which requires a united multi-sectoral approach that could bring in diverse resources and expertise that would be able to attain better public health outcomes and enhanced policy implementation. Additionally, several scholars for the Frontiers in Sustainable Foods Journal have postulated that having multi-sectoral groups aid in shared responsibility, leading to a status quo situation where one can request their trader, their retailer, or their pharmacy to endorse more antibiotic smart products. We are also in the process of designing brochures and banners after confirmation and assistance have been provided by NARC members in ascertaining its content. Subsequently, later this month and the next, the council has scheduled sessions in selected villages whereby we would be raising awareness on AMR, its impacts, and the measures that individuals could opt for. During the same period, the council will also be rolling out social media advisories on AMR for greater public dissemination. It is articulated that the council has a huge outreach on its social media platform. So this would reach thousands of individuals. Apart from this, the council is also in the process of using mainstream media to raise awareness on AMR, such as radio and TV talkback shows, publishing newspaper articles. We would like to acknowledge every stakeholder, our donors, for endowing us this prestigious responsibility for disseminating and educating crucial information out to our people, our community. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
So I just have a comment, no question. Thank you, Ashifa, for the presentation. I think just for the rest of the stakeholders, Consumer Council has been an active member of NAC for quite a long time. And we are fortunate to have them because the issue with AMR is this, in terms of communicating it to the public. We use a lot of technical language. You must have heard about FIJIs, MRSA, the One Republic. Your grandmother, if you talk about that, she won't understand what you're talking about. So we're fortunate to have Consumer Council, who is being part of that, being able to understand what the AMR is and convey it in a medium or a language that the ordinary public can understand. So, through WHO and other partners, they are being supported to help us with that communication with the general public, that the public understands about what AMR is. Otherwise, if we ask Dr. Royford or Dr. Vincent to talk about this AMR to the public, most of the time they don't understand what they're talking about. But when the Consumer Council puts it in the language that they understand, it makes it easier and people able to draw, our children are able to draw those diagrams at the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva, for your presentation. Two things actually. You said there was 3-tier multi-sectoral team.
Yeah, panel discussion.
Right. So what are the 3 tiers? And also, apart from doing the articles and the newspaper, have you guys considered doing TV ads?
Yes, we have actually. Not precisely about TV, but newspaper and social media dissemination, because we also have to factor in the cost as well. But for our platform, it's usually free. So it's and it would be a much easier dissemination out to the public as well. So we are considering the mainstream media, but however, not advertisement on TV, but radio and TV talkback shows.
The 3-tier.
Yes, so we are currently, due to our funds being held up by our donors, that's why this workshop will be held at the end of this month, hopefully. So in here, we are trying to target the 3-tier multi-sectoral panel discussion, whereby we'll be focusing on the policy, that is the regulators and their perception about AMR, the consumer's perception about AMR, and the academia and the researchers' perception on AMR, and how together we can effectively work to address these issues and work forward. So these are the panel discussions we are trying to arrange and hold towards our month end. So it's like, because if we have consumer angle, it would not understand the perception of the regulators as well as the academia, because consumers would not have that amount of knowledge. However, the knowledge that is embedded with the regulators would not be similar to the consumers and the researchers. Henceforth, this is like a combination of the 3. This is also suggested by the World Health Organization to have a combination of such panel discussions in order to move forward, so that we are not excluding any particular sector for that matter. Our governmental bodies, members, there'll be many of you that would be invited, so keep a lookout.
Just a question, if the Consumer Council were to choose a mascot for AMR, what would it be and why?
Okay. You just got me off guard. Probably something in the form of medication, I believe. So before this program started, I did take an approval from renal So it's something not related to AMR, but something the council is working on. We are designing our a strategic plan for the next 5 years. And this room is full of intellectual people, who have diverse knowledge in their areas. So something, I will go table by table if you guys permit. So I do have 30 minutes of leeway, I believe. So anything that you feel that the council should work on within the next 5 years, or something that you feel that our council is not performing in a particular area, and you as an individual, as a stakeholder, as a consumer, feel that we should look into that particular area so that we can incorporate that in our strategic plan for the next 5 years and accomplish it. So is it okay if I go table by table?
Sorry, before you go table by table, can I just ask a question? So we're talking about AMR, and one of the cause of that is the misuse and overuse of antibiotics. And I do know some people do buy antibiotics over the counter. Is there such a law that pharmacies are not allowed to sell antibiotics over the counter? Because this is one of the main reasons why we're facing this.
We are actively working with the pharmaceutical board in reviewing and proposing a legislation as well. So this is also in our market surveillances, and we'll be entering into our ministries of these particular situations that should be under regulation of the medications, especially that could have an impact on the consumers. And if we have identified in our market surveillances, we will be looping in the FIJI Pharmaceutical Board to ascertain from their angle whether this particular medicine should be sold over the counter or not. Because some of the medications are readily available without even a prescription.
I can answer. Legislatively, no pharmacies are not allowed to sell antibiotics. The regulations came into effect this year, anyway.
August.
Yes. There's a poor regulation, one. There is poor enforcement.
Yes, there's poor enforcement. So we are currently working with the enforcement bit as well. We're trying to amend and propose new methods of enforcing it.
Will there be a fine if they?
We are trying to embed that. Yes, that would be in our submission.
Put the pressure.
There's a question on Zoom as well. I don't know if it was a recent question or from another presentation. Can you answer the question?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Reno?
Just hold on. Let me.
Yeah, it's on the speaker.
Can you hear me?
Try saying it.
Hello, hello. Bulavanaka. I'll send something in the chat.
It's coming to that one.
Can you can't hear me?
Yeah, it's on the speaker.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Put the mic on the speaker.
Okay, you can hear me. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think it's fantastic that the Consumer Council. Hello, Adam Jenny here. I'm currently in Melbourne. It's fantastic the Consumer Council is there. Can I ask your comments about where these campaigns have been successful? They have been really successful in schools in a means of normalizing good practice, and certainly there's been some traction with climate change with this. And I just wondered if there are plans for that in Fiji at a school level for a level of education in order to normalize antibiotic awareness and stewardship? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for your question. Yes, we are also aspiring to address the schools in this manner as well. And hence we are also seeking approval from the ministry because it requires specific members. I think the law has changed now. So it requires approval from the ministry that only certain members can present on antimicrobial, especially in schools, because it's students and they have they're at a very early age. So, and the manner that we communicate. So the council is in the process of getting approval from the ministries, and thereby the schools are also in the pipeline, as well as the communities. Because we believe that it starts at a very early age, and in these cultures and situations, if we embed that into our consumers or the children at a very early age, we can see a remarkable difference.
Just to add a couple of things, Adam's absolutely right about the students and the children. One, you can see at the back the response.
Can you see?
Yeah, you guys can't see over Zoom, but there's a wall of posters that students made from, and then I'd like to extend a very heartfelt thank you to the Ministry of Education for facilitating this. The response came back last week into the office, and the office was flooded with posters. This is just a few, so there's over 200, as I said earlier. Targeting children and, well, targeting in terms of education, not something else. But yeah, like, that is the place to begin, because education, getting it from an early age, because once we are at this age, we are hard to change. And the other thing is that as part of the National Action Plan, there's a provision there to introduce AMR education into school curriculum. So it's part of the action plan as well. So I hope we can get that done.
Yes, that's in the pipeline.
All right. Thank you.
So any more questions? The first table, your contribution to our stakeholder or strategic plan, you feel that we should work on, or you feel that we are not up to par on some issues that we could address in future, especially in the next 5 years? I think everyone's mind is just on AMR. Next table.
What is
Dr. Vincent Lal's table.
So what is the question again?
So what you as a stakeholder, as a consumer, feel that we as the Consumer Council of Fiji should work on our strategic plan to optimize on certain areas. For example, do you feel like we should emphasize on AMR within the next 5 years to achieve that awareness and communication bit? You as a stakeholder, you as a consumer, what do you feel? Because we are also incorporating our stakeholders' views in our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Or do you feel it's supposed to be on a food or some other issue on how it's being regulated? Some of these. So
these are a number of areas to look at. I think one of my suggestions would be that the Consumer Council, as they've done with other issues, not AMR related directly, to maybe send certain items to laboratories which can test for products and ensure that in the market there are AMR compliant maybe products out there for consumers, something like that.
Okay. Any other one from the table? No, the back table?
Thanks. It's not so much from the organization I represent, but as a consumer, I think the council's, I stand to be corrected here, but I think the council's focus has been more in the retail, within like shops and those commercial outlets, like fewer commercial, but not more on these market vendors or roadside vendors, you know, and those. I think that's an area that maybe the council can look at the SP as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, disabled face seems pretty chatty this morning. Just from the, I guess, from the ministry side of things, and also personally, in relation to his topic, there's laws in place prohibiting the sale, slaughter and sale of meat if it's not gone to a formal slaughterhouse. I think we've had incidents in the past where members of the public they slaughter animals and then they sell. But that brings into the question the issue of food safety.
Yeah.
We have meat inspectors at the abattoirs that do the job, but that risk is elevated when it's out in the informal market. So just raising that awareness with the general public would be, I guess, an issue you guys could look into.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so just to follow through with what Dr. Beato had mentioned, on that aspect, some of our farmers also like when their livestock, like usually ducks, chickens, small ruminants or small livestock, when they're ready to sell, they post it in Facebook. So and that we don't encourage because then we don't know how they are being slaughtered, and it's the same for the regulated veterinary products. So because in other countries like the treatments can be bought over the counter, but that's not the case in Fiji, that's why we have an advantage here that most of the inexpensive first generation medications are still working. So, but sometimes now it's easy to order stuff online like the pet harness and all, which is good. But sometimes this also includes advertising, anti-clientic treatment, which is not good at all. So I guess on our part, like myself too, what I do is I message privately. But again, they can always ask me, who are you to ask us, to instruct us? So yeah, on that matter.
Thank you.
From my organization, but also in a conversation that was had during the food day, I think it's really good that the role of the Consumer Council and so far to raise awareness of food literacy, but also bringing that back to having a direct line of sight on nutrition outcomes, both for adults, but more so for children. I think that's really important that we all know what we are eating, but also understand and appreciate that the food that we eat should result into good nutrition. And what is good nutrition? And I think that's a role that the council can raise awareness, but also build education, both for adults that feed the children, but also the children so that they empower themselves to make those decisions whenever. I think that's a really good role, and you bringing together a lot of stakeholders, having those conversations would elevate the importance, but also bring hopefully an action on good nutrition here in Fiji.
Thank you.
I think to quote somebody I know, we have a lot of energy dense but nutrient poor food.
Anyone from that table?
The speaker for the table. So two things. One is about, you said the TV ads are hard because of funding. So can Consumer Council probably rope in people like Ozaid and maybe Fiji TV? They can give a discounted rate for the TV because you cannot bang any message into people unless they're seeing it right in their faces. Or maybe even consider going into the 6 and Damodar city kind of.
Go advertising.
Yeah. Yes, that would be good too. The other thing, because we're all pharmacists here and we just kind of took offense, right? AMR is not just related to one sector of just pharmacists. There is an agriculture sector which uses antibiotics indiscriminately in the commercial side on their animals, and that gets transferred to people as well. There is the environmental side, and of course, there is everything. So we cannot just blame pharmacists for doing it, right? It's not just us.
No, there was a statement in my presentation that acknowledged all sectors.
Yeah, so what about doctors who respect Yeah, do we have anything in the legislation?
Actually, we are currently, I will not go into much detail, but we are currently in our market surveillance whereby we are assessing that bit as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask if Consumer Council is working on anything that's going to improve people's health literacy. Just adding on to Madam there, she mentioned something about food literacy. I think health literacy is so important. If people understand basic health terms to start off with, I think understanding AMR. Because I think even talking about antibiotics, people really don't know what antibiotics is. People know Moxil.
That's a very common one, though.
Yeah, so is Consumer Council doing anything to improve health literacy?
We are currently working with the government, and we will take this into consideration as well. We're currently working with the government to reduce the impact of NCDs we have at the moment, and we will take a comment on board as well. Thank you. Any other from that side? No? Tina, yes.
Okay, we have two other presentations to get through, so.
Yes. We still have time.
Because we have mobile, we have a surprise presentation on IPC.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. This is a very important discussion, and we were thinking that as a group, when we were talking about, what we should, inform you, there were lots of, ideas coming up, and we were thinking maybe it would be the best idea to hold a workshop, invite all the relevant stakeholders, and we'd come together and.
Sure. I was just caught off guard with the amount of the diverse intellect we had on board. So I thought, just grab hold of this opportunity. Anyone else? No?
I think Noma is saying she wants to present.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll take your into consideration. Thank you so much.
The discussions can continue offline as well. So
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now up next we have Ms. Numa Vera from FIJI National University. If I can get this thing to work. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Both of you.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you now for the invitation to come and present this work again. this presentation is not new to some of the participants here. I've previously presented this in FIJI Pharmaceutical Society conference in Boeing. And I'm glad to present it again because the AMR issue is something we need to continuously talk about in all forums and get the message through hopefully at some point. This work is part of the EMA project. The EMA project is the enhancing the management of antimicrobial resistance in FIJI project. This project is done in partnership with the CSIRO, University of Technology Sydney, University of South Australia, FNU, USP, Ministry of Health, and funded by ACIAR through CSIRO. So I would like to acknowledge all the partners. Some of them are here, most of them are here from, and these projects sit under NAC. So I'm proud to be presenting this on behalf of the team. This work was done in CWM, and it's to determine the prevalence and susceptibility, antimicrobial susceptibility patterns of bacterial isolates in a tertiary hospital in FIJI. So we all know that antimicrobial resistance is a threat globally, and antimicrobial susceptibility testing results may guide us to better prescribe and select antibiotics, especially for clinicians and pharmacists. Also for clinicians and pharmacists, this AST testing or antimicrobial susceptibility testing may help us to rationally prescribe and to monitor the resistant organisms. So we investigated the susceptibility of microorganisms isolated at CWM from 2019 to 2021. So this was a retrospective review of the data from 2019 to 2021. This was the LIS data that is stored in CWM. We analyzed the antibiotic susceptibility and we categorized them according to WHO priority pathogens and determined some the resistant patterns. So most of the data, the distribution of data among males and females, almost similar, although a little bit more in female. If you see the age group of the samples, mostly were coming from the age 19 to 55 category. Now, when we look at the specimens that were analyzed, if you look at them by year-wise, you'll see almost equal distribution. Okay, although a little bit more in 2019 and 2020, 2021 bit of a drop, but almost similar distributions across the 3 years that we analyzed samples from. When we look at where the specimens were coming from, the general swabs were the main ones, and we had blood samples and genital swabs also were some of the common specimens that were analyzed. And we analyzed over 30,000 samples. So what were the, some of the common microorganisms when we look at the gram-positive isolates? Okay, most of them were CNS, Staph aureus, and beta-hemolytic streptococcus species, plus enterococcus species were some of the common gram-positive isolates. And the others were also there. For the gram-negatives, the common one was Klebsiella pneumonia, or 30%. We also have E. coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Acinetobacter baumannii were the common gram-negative isolates. Now, when we look at the antimicrobial resistant patterns among the common gram-positive organisms, these are some of the antibiotics that are tested in CWM. So for each of those antibiotics, we wanted to see the resistant patterns of those gram-positive organisms. And you can see, to some extent, we can say that, comfortably say that our gram-positive antibiotics for gram-positive organisms are a bit strong, still strong. We should also be mindful that they are also becoming, organisms are becoming resistant. You will see that Dr. Vincent mentioned at MRSA this morning in his presentation. The green bars you see common appearing there for all most of the antibiotics that were tested in CWM. And hopefully in the near future, we can also have similar data or that comparisons we can make to the animal health as well. Also, you will see Enterococcus species for the gram-positives becoming quite resistant for most of the antibiotics that are used in CWM and that were tested. How about the gram-negatives? You will see the picture is a bit messy, okay, because the gram-positives, the gram-negatives, there are lots of resistance happening to these organisms. These organisms are becoming quite resistant to some of our commonly used antibiotics that are available. You will see ampicillin. There's quite a number of organisms that are resistant to ampicillin, cephalotin, ceftriaxone. One of those is quite becoming not powerful anymore. Clotrimazole, gentamicin, and cephalotin. So these are some common antibiotics we use. So when we see such a picture, we should start becoming concerned on how we can avoid this from escalating further. So we look at some of the ESBL producers. What are some of the ESBL producers? And these are presented here, some of the common ESBL producers. You'll see Klebsiella pneumonia, one of the common isolates from CWM, is also one of the common ESBL producers. ESBL producers is a concern because when these organisms, ESBL producers, they become multi-drug resistant. So we might use some combinations, but then they can also become resistant to those combinations as well. We have E. coli as well. E. coli is one of the common ESBL producers, and Proteus mirabilis also as well. Now, when we look at the ESBL producers among the females and the males, again, almost similar distribution, although again, but this time, there's more ESBL producers coming from males compared to the females. And when we compare to the age group, we have in the babies, okay, the younger patient groups, ESBL producers are quite prevalent. That's within the infants and the neonates groups, and also patients above 60 years, so elderly patients are also at risk of, or the main, the ESBL producers are commonly present in these groups as well. So we try to look at the carbapenemase resistant producers as well. And again, when we look at the males and females, similar pattern we were seeing. Also male are more common to the specimens were commonly from males compared to females. And the common organisms that the carbapenemase produces, again, E. coli, Klebsiella pneumonia, and Klebsiella oxytocin were some of the common ones, or the main ones. So generally, again, we looked at meropenem, okay? So the resistant pattern for meropenem, the common organism we might all be aware of now is Acinetobacter baumannii, is quite resistant to meropenem. And there's some work that is ongoing on Acinetobacter baumannii. Also E. coli, Klebsiella, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Yeah, I'm aware that I think there's another person or another project doing work on Acinetobacter baumannii, zooming in to the molecular level. As part of the IMA project, we are now our next phase, we are zooming into E. coli, Kleb pneumonia, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. We want to go to the genetic level and see what genes are there. Now, when we look at the how we can prioritize addressing this organism, we try to compare them to WHO priority classifications. And WHO is a way has prioritized these organisms according to whether they are critical, high, or medium levels. So the critical organisms are those organisms that are multi-drug resistant. So if you look at our data at the moment, this will be our priority FIJI list. We have Klebsiella, E. coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Acinetobacter baumannii, some of the common organisms, also Proteus mirabilis. We should be aware that these organisms might in the near future or already happening, is that we might find it difficult to manage and treat patients who have these infections. And then we have priority 2. We have the Staph aureus and MRSAs, and then priority 3, the medium organisms to watch out for Haemophilus influenza and Streptococcus pneumoniae. So we try to zoom in from those priority areas, some of the common organisms, and see the resistant patterns for the 3 E's. So we have Klebsiella pneumonia. Okay, so if you can see, Klebsiella pneumonia is quite resistant to ampicillin and also ceftriaxone. Over the 3 years we studied, 2019, 2020, and 2021, there was a fluctuation in the resistant patterns. How about E. coli? E. coli also quite resistant to ampicillin and cephalotin. And also we pick up some resistant to meropenem as well, which has been increasing over the 3 years we studied. Pseudomonas aeruginosa, okay, quite the resistant patterns quite more compared to the others. We have ampicillin, cephalotin, the main ones we should be worried about. Also ceftriaxone, about more than 50% resistant. We also have meropenem, which is more than 50% resistant to Pseudomonas aeruginosa as well. Acinetobacter baumannii, you'll see the picture is even more sad because our antibiotics, most of our antibiotics are not very strong against this organism. And our stronger antibiotics we used to use to treat this organism are also becoming resistant. Enterobacter cloycin, penicillin, ampicillin, and cephalotin, you see almost resistant, almost 100% resistant to this organism, and ceftriaxone over 50% resistant. Okay, and protease mirabilis, again, ampicillin and cefalozin, quite resistant. This organism is quite resistant to these antibiotics as well. Staph aureus, penicillin, okay, penicillin, ampicillin, and ceftriaxone again, resistant. We've also seen that for MRSA, penicillin, of course, is resistant to MRSA 100%. Cloxicillin, cefaclo, and gentamicin, our recommended treatment, is also becoming resistant. Neisseria gonorrhea, we have penicillin and doxycycline, okay, more than 50% resistant in this to this organism to these antibiotics. Similarly, we have Haemophilus influenza, more than 50%, almost approaching 100% resistant to doxy and erythromycin. Strep pneumonia looks a little bit good. It looking good, but we need to be careful as we will agree that this is one of the common organisms we will see in our settings as well. So what's our take-home message regarding the gram-negative isolates, okay, that are highly resistant to available antibiotics? We have penicillin with MRSA is 100%, Staph is almost 100%, and we have also Enterococcus, which is also becoming highly resistant to penicillin, doxycycline, methylated hemolytic streptococcus is becoming highly resistant. We have cloxicillin, MRSA, almost 100% resistant. Similarly, cefaclo, ampicillin, a group of microorganisms are becoming highly resistant to this antibiotic. We have clotrimazole also approaching over 50% resistant patterns we can see in Enterococcus species. We have gentamicin. We should worry about Enterococcus facilis, Enterococcus species, and MRSA becoming resistant to gentamicin. Cephalotin, we have Enterococcus species again becoming resistant, highly resistant. Ciprofloxacillin, Enterococcus facilis, and Enterococcus species becoming highly resistant, and ceftriaxone. We also have Enterococcus species, Staph aureus, and MRSAs becoming highly resistant. So those were our gram positives. Our gram negatives, again for penicillin, we have Enterobacter, Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter baumannii, Klebsiella, and E. coli becoming highly resistant. For doxycycline, we have Haemophilus influenza, erythromycin, again, we also have Haemophilus influenza, ampicillin, a number of organisms, gram-negative organisms are highly resistant to ampicillin. We also have chlorphenicol, Acinetobacter baumannii is becoming highly resistant. Clotrimazole, again, Acinetobacter baumannii, similarly gentamicin, Acinetobacter baumannii, ciprofloxacillin, you can also see Acinetobacter baumannii, meropenem, piperacin, ceftazine, and piptas. Also, Acinetobacter baumannii is becoming highly resistant to these antibiotics. So what were some of the challenges? We tried to look at the resistant patterns over the years, and one of the challenges we had was antibiotic tests in out of stock. For some antibiotic tests, they were out of stock for more than 6 months or even longer. So we couldn't really generate the good patterns over the 3 years we studied. Another challenge we had was the entering of data into LIS systems that can be improved. I believe we need to carry out more capacity building in that area as well. How to properly enter the data, and that can be used later on to inform our use of rational prescribing of antibiotics in the hospital. Thank you. That's all.
Any questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to inquire the different organisms that you presented on. They're all cultured in the blood culture, or did you go across all boards, tissue, pus swabs, and
So these are, yes, thank you, Dr. Chris. These are the specimens we are looking. So including blood, you see the general swabs, the main group.
So you've combined it all in one?
Correct, yes. But there was another analysis done, we focused mainly on blood.
Because we have to note that some of it can be infectious, pathogenic, and some could be colonizers, especially you're talking about those organisms, which is a great concern for us at CWM. Thank you.
Yes. So there was another analysis we did for 2014, 15, 18, 17, and 16. Down to 14, where we look at mainly blood. When we were analyzing for this data, 2019, 2021, 2020, and 2021, when we just extracted the blood specimens, there was a big gap in the 2020 because there was no blood samples for 2020, so we couldn't really do that. Yeah, so that's why we put it presented separately. All right, I believe there's another presenter, so thank you.
We have Sister Elizabeth Labose from CWM and business. Same is here.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. This is just going to be quick because I know it's catching up in about 15 minutes since Dr. Eric just approached us while we were sitting. And it's only proper that you hear from us. So this research was done way back this time, which was done by me and Assistant Cashley. And at the time, I was a nurse at intensive care unit, and my specialty is intensive care nursing, infection control, and currently I'm sitting at clinical governance. So I just want to show you a little bit about the background of work and about incidence of nosocomial infection at CWM Hospital, and why is it a concern? And when we're talking about antimicrobial resistance today, it's very, very important that we highlight the issues and identify. And I'm just sitting with Dr. Tracy there, who is our Infection Prevention Control Committee Chair. So we were just talking about the importance of capturing the baseline of information that is basically important to us. So this is just 5 slides. I wanted to talk about the interest that lies behind understanding infection prevention control, which has become the cornerstone of what we're all talking about today. So without the basics at the base hospital and understanding nosocomial infection, I think the fight to safety of usage of antibiotics will be useless. So this research was done way back then, just to give us a baseline of where we are and what do we need to understand. So the interest lies between understanding the incidence and why nosocomial infections is really a worry to us. And I'm so glad to actually read the research that was done lately by FNU again today, giving us a more deeper highlights on how we should see the high risks and the prevalence of infections that our citizens and our customers are faced with while they come in for admission. So this has become a significant problem in the intensive care unit worldwide, and approximately 30% of our patients admitted to ICU develop nosocomial infections because of the invasive devices used during their management. So you can see that nosocomial infections or infections that occurs while patients are admitted in the hospital within 48 hours, they have a high risk associated with increase in mortality, meaning a death rate, or in their length of stay in the ICU, and also incurred hospital costs. This study was based around the concept paper of us wanting to find out what were the ventilated associated pneumonia, and also the use of central lines, and also the most common nosocomial infections that arises from patients that are admitted in the ICU. So there were no published data back then at that time on the prevalence of nosocomial infections in FIJI. So such information is required to describe the current epidemiology and improve infection prevention control in the adult ICU in FIJI. So the aims of the study was just like basically to describe the microbiological confirmed nosocomial infections in FIJI in the largest ICU. And our objectives at that time was mainly around to determine the number and the proportion of microbiologically confirmed nosocomial infections among patients admitted to the FIJI's largest ICU from that time. And among the nosocomial infections, to determine the proportion identified by site and by pathogen. The methods that we used for this design was basically retrospective as a descriptive study. This was basically done with the adult ICU setting at CWM in Suva. In the largest ICU in FIJI at that time, we were focusing only on 6. It's a 6 beds at that time. Provides care for both ventilated and non-ventilated patients, medical and general surgical patients, and patients directly admitted from the community of the hospitals and other wards around the Suva area or CWM hospital. Study population, when an infection or sepsis is clinically suspected by the doctor, blood samples and samples from the devices, example, if it's urinary, like you've just seen in the last slide, catheter, are sent to the lab for culture. And this study only included patients with clinical features of sepsis and that had bacterial pathogen culture from at least 2 specimens taken from the patient more than 48 hours after ICU admission. So these are the indicators of systematic inflammatory response. Temperature onset of fever, more than 38 degrees, increase in white cell counts above 12,000, increase with a heart rate more than 90 beats per minute, tachypnea more than 20, no chest infiltrates, purulent endotracheal or tracheal discharges. So the exclusion criteria, patients that arrive with sepsis or community-acquired infectious diseases unless after 48 hours they had new signs of sepsis on the surveillance records. Patients that were suspected to have sepsis but that had no microbiological confirmations of sepsis in the surveillance record. So the data collections were that, and the variables included were age, date of admissions, dates of specimen collections, length of stay in the ICU, devices used, and the bacterial pathogens isolated in the specimen. So this was how our data entry and analysis were validated, and the rate of nosocomial infections was calculated by dividing the number of patients with nosocomial infections at that time by total number of patients in the ICU during the same period. So the results were this. We have 663 patients were admitted to the ICU during that range, from 2011 to 2012. And from the 114, 70% of these patients developed nosocomial infections. The majority, which was 58% of the patients, were admitted to the ICU from other hospitals or wards. Maximum number of days of these patients stayed in ICU was between 8 to 14 days, and the average number of days these patients were ventilated within 8 days. So that is basically the range. And these were the results. We've analyzed that about 65% had respiratory infection from EGT aspirin, tip, trickle, and other sources. 66% of the 75 had bloodstream infections, which is blood. And you can see in the last presentation from FIJI, they've also identified the increase of bloodstream infections in terms of blood cultures. And you can see that it increases still there. So it has never gone down. And the 48%, which is 55, the number, had urinary tract infections while admitted at the ICU. And 40% had surgical site infections on wound or swab obtained from the wound swab, the wound rays. So pathogen distribution showed that gram-negative species, Klebsiella pneumoniae, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and the Acinetobacter species were the most frequently identified. So it was identified back then, and it's still identified today. And I know that there's really, we need to work on antimicrobial resistance as far as we need to combat resistance in the ICU or in the Sidam Hospital. So these are basically the distribution of pathogens associated with nosocomial infections in relation to the site of specimen. And you can see it there. It's very clear. I remember as I was sitting there in the last presentation, they also mentioned about, it was also mentioned about Klebsiella pneumoniae, ESBL producing, and also the MRSA in the animal health. So we've also identified it at that time from the data collection, from the research, and we still identify it today. So it has actually given us more deeper sense and meaning on how we should tailor make our infection prevention control strategies to actually combat AMR. So from the study, Klebsiella pneumoniae is ESBL producer were common in bloodstream and urinary pathogens simultaneously. It will be very interesting to see what's happening today. 19% of CNS were primary pathogens causing bloodstream infection. That's a worry in itself. And Pseudomonas aeruginosa was the most common surgical site specimens. If you read up about nosocomial infections in FIJI or nosocomial infections even in the Pacific, the common thing is surgical site infection. And I'm sure that we are working closely with our Infection Prevention Control Committee in trying to actually figure out ways in which we can improve on our surveillance and data collections on how best we can capture our surgical site infections, because it's really alarming and increasing in this hospital. Bloodstream infections were recorded to be the highest at that time. And I can still see from the previous presentation that it remains the highest. So from this data, you can basically see the patient's outcome. That means patient did not come with his infection. Patient acquired while admitted at the ICU. So that means at that time, every 5th patient or every 3rd patient that comes into the ICU will acquire a bloodstream infection. So you can see the distribution of their data. And then it will be interesting to see the recent and the current increase in the number of other resistant organisms that are coming up, like meropenem and carbapenem also, to name a few, that we are targeting in terms of strategizing antimicrobial resistance. So this study has shown that nosocomial infections are also common in adult ICU in Fiji, and gram-negative bacteria are common causes of it. So it has also shown that the percentage of nosocomial respiratory tract infection is due to prolonged use of the ventilator. So it'll be very interesting to do a study or prevalence on ventilated pneumonia infection, associated infections, to actually see the doctors and use the data for informed decision making. And also it has increased the length of stay in ICU, and findings are of course similar to other studies. So that is a comprehensive recording of surveillance data is very important for ongoing monitoring of infection control rates in the biggest hospital and pathogens involved. Due to the retrospective nature of the study, it could not capture information required to calculate the device associated rates. However, it was able to show the studies of nosocomial infections in the adult ICU and CWM. In a country like ours, efforts to prevent nosocomial infection should aim at simple strategies, such as adhering to recommended infection prevention practices, especially hand hygiene. So we continue to advocate for that from that time until now. And we see that there's a lot of changes in terms of how best we can institute hand hygiene in all hospitals, divisional hospitals. And we thank God for COVID, because it has actually just brought IPC into the limelight. We were sort of like at the back of every other priorities, but thank God to COVID, because it has brought IPC into the limelight, where everyone will acknowledge that we should aim at the simple and the basic strategy that Fiji can use, and we can target strategies like combating AMR, awareness, education, the WASH component, consumables will not follow, but these are the recommended infection prevention control practices. And this is evidence that it is growing. And we've just seen from the last data that hospitals are still fighting with the rise of nosocomial infections, and this is our important. So this study does not focus on resistance of pathogens involved, but therefore future studies should, like what you just in the last study, which I really wanted you to see that this has happened way back in 2010. And then 11, 12, rising, so it is worrying. So therefore, future studies should focus on this component of infection controls, that medical and nursing practices are improved. So I just want to acknowledge these people who have supported the study at that time. We were able to publish the paper. So you can read more about this paper on Google. Thank you. And we've also developed the National Infection Prevention Control Plan for Fiji. And there is just a component on antimicrobial and strategies. So it's it's developing mental health, and we're working on it. And I'm so happy to be part of this presentation today. And we've also had our Fiji IPC guideline, which is really important for Fiji, help us to actually go further with how best we can strategize and any questions we will ask the people.
Questions from the audience? So, run over time here. I will close out this event.
So you can hear me. Thank you, Sister. Presentation. I was just informed by Rinal, that will get kicked out at 1 o'clock. And so we need to go into a closing remark. So thank you to the presenters. I think we started from animal health, environment, bit on the antibiotics, then we move towards the human health issues with regards to AMR. But I just want to say that, except probably consistently, most of the members who presented are from NAC. And the intention of NAC is to have the symposium when all the major projects are completed by May or June. So we invite all the members, prepare your presentations for that time. It's going to be a major research and policy application symposium. And that's where USP and CSIRO will be releasing their results of their studies. And I think some of the AMR projects with FNU, also ministry, we also invite the clinicians to also be presenting in that major forum. We also will be looking for sponsors from WHO, ACIAR, DFAT, and others to support this initiative with AMR. I think the important thing is these projects, I've got some assurance that we've got projects support for the coming years, but I think we need to display the results and what are the policy and practice applications of the results. How can we know it's a fact, everyone here should understand that we cannot stop AMR, right? It's a natural phenomenon, but we can slow its progress and look for alternative means of therapeutic measures. And that's what USP was working on in terms of using bacteriophages for attacking these AMR strains. So I think we look forward to the symposium sometime in May, June. The dates may change depending on the project's completion with CSIRO and the other Combat AMR, who's another major player. So with that, thank you all to those who are listening in. Sorry, we have to move out of this room because otherwise we'll be kicked out from here by the hotel. Thank you all for listening in. And Rinal has promised to send you the presentation slides and all the contact of this day. Please ensure you go out with the action plan. The PDFs will be given out to everyone. Also as well, sent in that same email, and other materials that you may need. T-shirts, I think you see a Shodra at the back if you want one. What else? Brochures, everything at the back, calendars, all those materials to be given to you. And with that, thank you all for coming. We look forward to our next event sometime next year. NAC is going to continue to meet and organize for the symposium. Maybe not in February, we need to shift it towards May and June as per request of the projects. With that, thank you all for coming in and attending to this, and enjoy the week.
Okay. Your lunch process is with Sally, and please, if you can do the quiz or pass the quiz along to members of the public, friends and family. Take the QR code on the table. Thank you. Right, thank you, people of the Zoom. Okay.